Hello, hello, hello. Jordan Sheridan, live on Friday. What's today? April 7th, the year 2023. Delighted to be joined by Louis DeAngelis. Uh, I have been scavenging around, not for Easter, but working on multiple stories. You've been working on multiple stories. Um, I tend to have a poor habit of telling everybody, hey, I want to go live in 45 minutes, while also trying to get a Substack piece out in addition to the live stream, while also responding to 7 people in a group chat, while also trying to fix my house's air conditioning, even though I have no idea how to do that,
Yep. Maybe
with
sprinkle
a
in
screaming
changing a few
baby and a
diapers.
screaming
Yeah.
dog. So it's been quite the morning so far, but this is going to be a huge show. So I encourage everybody to smash that like button. We have, I think, really major um, news regarding East Palestine. One of those is urgent, I would say, because it involves something going on tomorrow in East Palestine. The other is more of a long-term issue, which Lewis has been investigating. We're also later in the hour going to have somebody that Status Coup viewers probably remember. His name is Scott Desnoyers. Unfortunately, his son died about 2 years ago, I believe, committed suicide. And Scott has been fighting for years since then because his son's mental health issue was under control until he was taken off of his health care because of a $20 unpaid bill. So when he was taken off of his health care for his $20 bill that was not paid, which I believe was actually paid, but there was a issue, his mental health issue deteriorated because he could not afford his medication anymore. And unfortunately, he ended his life. So Scott has an event that we will be covering on Easter Sunday. I will be covering on Easter Sunday live. So he's coming on today to kind of preview that event. But let's start. The headline starts with a story about Norfolk Southern lying to residents, and we are going to get to that. But I do want to start actually with an event happening in East Palestine tomorrow, with the disclaimer that I'm not a chemist. I'm not a doctor. Lewis, I don't think you are either.
No. Although I got to say, I'm learning a whole lot more about chemistry every day doing this. So
Yes. Let me just ask, where did you send it? But there's been, as we've reported, there's kind of been a back and forth about an Easter egg event that's going on. Easter is Sunday. It's Passover now. Happy Passover to my tribes, my fellow tribesmen and women. And was an Easter event that was supposed to happen in the local park, the city park in East Palestine. Louis, you've been to East Palestine twice, so set the scene. How close is this park to where there's a contaminated creek and other things going on?
yeah, for sure. So just to recap some folks on like how we learned about this initially, and like we did some reporting on this. We published a piece on Substack. We did a live stream on this before when we first heard this news that East Palestine was planning on having an Easter egg hunt in the city park this weekend. We reported on this initially probably 2-3 weeks ago at this point. And this event was being put on by the East Palestine Park Board initially. Lots of residents were rightfully concerned about it because this park is, as you were just setting up right there, the entrance to this park is right where the Sulphur Run and Leslie Run essentially converge. Sulphur Run is the heavily contaminated stream that essentially runs right from ground zero of the Norfolk Southern derailment that happened on February 3rd and runs through the center of East Palestine and then connects into Leslie Run right at the entrance to this park. At the entrance to this park, there are water aeration devices still there as of, I believe they're all still there today, but even as of my last visit, not super long ago, they were there on both sides of the street where the entrance to the park is. And we're talking a couple 100 feet away from where the Easter egg hunt is scheduled to take place. But again, I mean, this is it's right next to the park where this is happening. I have not seen soil sample results from the park yet. The air sampling results that we've seen so far have been all over the place. We've heard from the EPA directly that a lot of air monitoring that had been done has been inadequate to pick up a lot of the chemicals of concern at the correct levels. But as of about a week ago, we had learned that the mayor had not signed a permit for this event to take place after a town hall event that went on. But now it seems like that may have changed because right now the event is still scheduled to take place this weekend. I did reach out to the mayor to see if we could get a comment on if he did end up signing the permit or what may be happening. We haven't heard back. But yeah, as you said, I mean, this event is planning on taking place this weekend now, Easter weekend, with a whole bunch of children in this park with all this water aeration going on the bottom. And not to mention that this park was actually a staging area for a while for a lot of equipment. There were dumpsters and whatnot filled with all of these kind of boom socks that are used in the cleaning process that were all in the park. So definitely a lot of concerned parents still in East Palestine over this.
So first of all, excuse my French, smash that fucking like button. Only 100 people watching. We need to get this out to a whole lot more people. Every single person smash this like button because there are serious health ramifications to what we're about to talk about. So smash that like button. Sorry, Mom, if you're watching for my language. We're going to get to the other story. Again, we're also going to have Scott on in a little bit. But I want to be clear. We have a lot of people from East Palestine watching. Ultimately, it's your decision if you attend this event tomorrow. I believe it's from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. all day in the East Palestine Park. We don't have the medical expertise to tell you what to do, but we are going to tell you that the soil testing that they just put out to kind of give you this, hey, the EPA, by the way, it wasn't the EPA, it was a contractor that did the testing, not the EPA. The soil testing has a lot of, doesn't smell right, no pun intended. So we're not going to read this whole thing, but this is the kind of nice story out there. Spring Fling set in East Palestine. The man on the right is somebody from Norfolk Southern. So he's holding the Easter eggs that I guess Norfolk Southern paid for, from what I hear.
Do we have this to be able to put on the screen? We actually...
Do you have it, Colin? It's the Spring Fling story. It's in the live doc. Colin's still on Eastern time, I think, even though he moved back to Texas. There we go. So here's the story. Not going to read the whole thing, but going down, I just want to read what I think is the most important. The Easter egg hunt will follow at 11 a.m. on the park's tennis and basketball courts. Areas will be designated by age group. And again, this event is tomorrow. The location was chosen to ease health concerns in the wake of the Norfolk Southern train derailment. Both courts have been cleaned and disinfected by the railroad. I don't really know what cleaned and disinfected by the railroad means. Did they spray Febreze?
I mean, if we base it on previous reporting that I did, they probably did come in and essentially spray Febreze or spray the equivalent of germ cleaners that are used for cleaning hospitals all over it, because that does a whole lot of good for chemicals and all the research that we did here. Right. I mean, it's ridiculous. You want to pick a safe place to do it? Just do it in another town. These folks are having to drive to New Waterford, a town over, to go to the Norfolk Southern Assistance Center every other day anyway to go get the reimbursements. Have the freaking Easter egg hunt over there. Seems like it'd be a lot safer to just do it over there. These folks are used to making that drive already. It just seems like an unnecessary risk to be doing it in the park. Sorry.
But also, Lewis, if I burn down your house, would you trust me setting the booms for the new house that I'm rebuilding?
No, of course. It's ridiculous.
They're having the railroad company, who, by the way, needs good PR right now. So the railroad company's paying for the Easter egg hunt. The railroad company's paying to disinfect, whatever the hell that means. All right, let's continue. The railroad, both courts have been cleaned and disinfected by the railroad. Air and soil testing conducted at the park and in the village have shown no cause for alarm, blah, blah, blah. All right, so let's get to that air and soil testing. This is a PDF. At the top, it says the Technical Assistance Services for Communities, East Palestine train derailment, review of city park soil chemical analysis, April 5th, 2023. So right there is a little, I I would say, if you don't have time to read this whole thing, could give off a false impression that this is results from April 5th. Not so much. Overview. This document provides a TSC summary and review of the recent soil sampling at East Palestine City Park. The document is for East Palestine government officials to use in discussing the soil sample results with community members. The document is funded by the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, the EPA, TASC program. The contents do not necessarily reflect the policies, actions, or positions of the EPA. Colin, can you highlight that for a second? The contents do not necessarily, oh yeah, they made this impossible to highlight. The contents do not necessarily reflect the policies, actions, or positions of the EPA. Let me break that down in English, what that means, parents of East Palestine. This is being presented as EPA soil testing. The EPA testing the soil. And in the first paragraph, you can't make this up. It says, basically, this is not the EPA's official position. Continue. What was done? EPA has had soil samples taken from the city park March 9th to 10th. So over a month ago, these soil tests were taken. Lewis, you've been to East Palestine twice. There's been weather since then.
Yeah, and again, they're still digging up all of the tracks. There's about a half a mile scar through the center of East Palestine where all of the soil removal is happening. Every time the wind blows, I mean, the reason that they've offered this temporary relocation to folks is because the wind is blowing. There are still smells everywhere. Near all of the aeration devices, there are smells. And I mean, I don't need a detector to tell you that there's definitely chemicals coming out based on the symptoms that I personally experienced and the symptoms that dozens of residents have told me that they experienced when this sort of stuff is happening. So it's the whole thing here is tricky because it's like, is there a chance that the park is free of contaminants? Yes, there is a chance. It's not right on top of it, right? I don't want to over dramatize this, right? But it is very close proximity to where all of this aeration is being done. And just out of an abundance of caution, if not anything else, why do it right there? Why do it right in town right now? Let's give it a little bit of time. Let's do it in a much safer location. I'm not saying you got to cancel your Easter egg hunt altogether, but just do it somewhere that it makes a little bit more sense out of an abundance of caution, right? You don't need to pretend like you know everything. These folks clearly haven't known exactly what's been going on the whole time. It's okay to say that you don't know, and out of an abundance of caution, we're going to go do this somewhere else. And that is why the EPA and all of these organizations right now involved in the cleanup are in such a PR nightmare, is because they've lied to people so many times saying that they know exactly what's going on. Yes, your air is safe. The water is safe. We know that it's fine. We know that everything's all good. When in reality, they didn't know. They should have just said, you know what? We are still doing the research into this. We don't know. Out of an abundance of caution, let's not return back right away. Let's not pretend everything is all fine and good.
Lewis, excuse me, Lewis. The head of the EPA, 30 days after this derailment, a month after this derailment, said, yeah, if it were my kids, I would tell them not to play by the contaminated creek. The kids were playing by the creek. That we have video of adults nearly fainting near that creek. Mm-hmm. Kids for 30 days were playing by that creek. Joggers were jogging by that creek. And after the EPA official said it, then the next day they had signs.
Yep. And I mean, those signs should have been there from day one. I mean, it took weeks for there even to be signs that say, keep out, testing in progress. You know what I mean? When John Farina and I were there on our first trip to East Palestine, which was about 2 weeks or so after the derailment happened, those signs were not there. There were people going up to the creeks, taking photos, throwing rocks in, doing all the stuff. I mean, ourselves included, because we're trying to go see what the heck's going on. But you know, Stella Gamble, an East Palestine resident who I've interviewed in person, you've interviewed on the show remotely. She made the point in several interviews. How are we letting kids go and do this? Kids see the videos of people throwing rocks in the streams and they want to go do it. I mean, I'm a 29-year-old and I wanted to go do it. That was one of the first things we did. It was like, let's go see for ourselves what the hell's going on here. Throw a rock in the creek, see a giant rainbow come up. Like, imagine what if I'm 29 years old and I want to go do that. Imagine what a 13-year-old wants to do. Like, they want to go do that and they're going to sit there and do it over and over again. Who knows what the heck a lot of these kids have exposed themselves to with a lot of that stuff. Again, they don't know. The adults in the room need to have come in and made it very clear from early on that this was an issue. They did not. They pretended like everything was fine, and it wasn't.
So I'm going to kind of move through this faster so we can get to the other story too. So what are the results from the 14 samples they took? 14 samples of soil from 7 locations, again, taken over a month ago. The results, what are the results? The results are summarized in the table below. This table provides results for chemicals that were detected by the laboratory. More chemicals were analyzed, but to keep the information concise, only the detected chemicals are listed here. The complete list can be found in the laboratory reports. All of the results are in units of milligrams of chemical per kilogram of soil. For instance, the results of pyrene for the surface soil samples, blah, 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 blah. You will notice empty cells in this table. This means there are no detectable results. Okay, here I believe is the most important part. You will also notice that many of the results have letters with them. For instance, the results for anthracene for the surface sample at the L5 location is 0.02 J. The letter J is called a data qualifier. It tells you the accuracy and precision of this value. When a result is qualified with a letter J, U, or other, that means the result is outside of the ability of the laboratory instrument to measure it with accuracy and precision. Let me repeat that. When a result is qualified with a letter J, U, or other, that means the result is outside the ability of the laboratory instrument to measure it with accuracy and precision. The number is still usable, but it needs to be evaluated cautiously as it is somewhat uncertain. Well, that gives me a lot of confidence taking my kids to the park for 7 hours.
Oh
you will
my
see,
God.
You will see a number of data qualified numbers in the table. This means that the level of these chemicals are very low, sometimes lower than what the analysis instrument is capable of measuring. Lewis, you've experienced this, where the equipment is literally not actually capable of picking up certain levels that they deem low.
Right. I mean, we saw this a week and a half ago or so when I published the piece on the air testing, the residential air testing being incorrect. They're going into these homes with these handheld PIDs, photoionization detectors. It's basically an air detector to look for these chemicals. And the EPA admitted that when testing for butyl acrylate, one of the chemicals of concern here, the device can only start picking up the readings at 100 parts per billion. But the level of concern set by the EPA is 20 parts per billion. So in other words, the reading is only going to pop up when it is 5 times higher than the level of concern where you need to leave, and you shouldn't be exposing yourself to that for a period of time. So that's one example. A whole bunch of other examples is a lot of these devices that they're using can't even pick up a lot of the chemical byproducts when these things were set on fire initially. I've talked about a lot of this before, but as far as, burning vinyl chloride, when you do that, the byproducts when combustion happens include things such as formaldehyde, phosgene, hydrogen chloride. Specifically with phosgene, got multiple experts on the record saying you're never going to find phosgene with one of these devices. I've got experts on the record saying you're never going to find formaldehyde unless you have a special attachment and you have the device in a special setting. And when it is in that special setting with that special attachment, you cannot test for any of the other things at the same time. That has not happened in any of these homes. So this sounds like another similar example where you've got machines that, sure, yeah, we can find it, but it's not going to be accurate. Well, what the hell is the point then? Ugh.
I just put the PDF that I'm reading for in the super chat. So if you live in East Palestine or you don't, but just want to read it, if you go down, and it might be too small for us to show because the PDF is a little small, the results are littered with the letter J. The results are littered with the letters J, U, and the very letters that they are saying are qualifiers for imprecise, and levels that we cannot make with accuracy and precision. Now, some devil's advocates or pro-corporate pollution advocates will say, well, Jordan, all of these things, it's never totally exact. Yeah, that's the point. So why would you take your kids who have already been experiencing nosebleeds? We're not making this up. Lewis, thanks to you Status Coup viewers, has been there twice. We're trying to send him back for a third time. So please, if you're not a paying member, sign up today, statuscoup.com/join. You got kids with nosebleeds. You got kids with chemical bronchitis. You got kids who are nauseous. Kids have been dizzy. We've spoken with mothers of kids who have been vomiting. Mm-hmm. Not to mention the trauma they're dealing with.
Right.
So by the way, we're going to get to it. This isn't even the EPA. It's a contractor for the EPA. A lot of times the EPA says it's doing the testing. It is a contractor. That's why, again, in the first sentence of this, this is not the Onion. It says the contents do not necessarily reflect the policies, actions, or positions of the EPA. So I got to say right now, and I don't know the mayor. I haven't spoken with the mayor. I've heard some residents say some nice things about the mayor. So I'm not bashing the mayor. He himself has said he's in over his head. He is a part-time mayor. He didn't expect this to happen. I'm sure he's got a lot of pressure on him. He's already snapped at a town hall from that pressure, and I don't blame him. This is not a federal position. It's a small town mayor. My assumption is the mayor, frankly, and I wouldn't know this unless I had called an expert, and I'm going to read her statement. The mayor doesn't know how to read this either, and he's just believing what he's told by the EPA. But Mayor Trent, if the first sentence is basically the EPA does not stand by this, if they are saying, hey, if you see these letters, it means the results are not precise. If it's saying that the actual the actual equipment we're using cannot detect certain lower levels, I have a 5-month-old daughter now. I would not take my kid, and I would not let my citizens.
Yeah.
And I don't care if the Norfolk Southern disinfected the basketball court and the tennis court. Lewis, it doesn't matter if the tennis court and the basketball court itself don't have soil on it, although it does have it under it. When the park itself has a creek that's 500 feet away?
Yeah, maybe even less. It depends on where exactly they're doing all of this. But like again, I'm going to go back to what I said before. I think it's okay to say that you don't know, and that's the biggest issue in this whole thing is these agencies have come in and pretended like the whole thing was under control and everything has been fine the entire time they've been there. Out of an abundance of caution, this event probably shouldn't happen. A lot of other things that have happened definitely shouldn't have happened. People should not have been told that their homes were safe to go back into. The residential tests that were done in these people's homes were all basically bogus. If you've got devices that can't pick up all of the chemicals that would be created, if you've got devices that can't pick them up at the correct levels. So it's thing after thing after thing. The residents have rightfully been very, very questioning of every single thing that happens. And it's because they have to be at this point. They've had to become experts in all of this sort of stuff. They've had to learn how to digest these ridiculous reports that are coming in. They've had to look for what you're pointing out here. And this was my first time seeing actually this document that you showed on the screen here. All of these little letters, and it's not clear unless you read all of the big blocks of text up above until you get to the actual chart and you see the letters. If you didn't read all of that block of text up above, you're not going to notice all of what all of those letters mean throughout. It's just another poor tactic being used to make everything seem like everything is fine, when again, in reality, it is much better to just say, you don't know. Out of an abundance of caution, we're still waiting on a lot of these results. And I am excited to start to see some results. I'm actually expecting to get some results today from a handful of residents who had independent testing done by Dr. Welton and Purdue University, who works with Purdue University, to have some of those tests done. And I'll be very curious to see how those tests compare to a lot of the testing being done by contractors of the EPA, contractors of the railroad. I'm not convinced that they're going to look very similar, especially considering we've already seen contradicting tests come from Purdue compared to the Ohio EPA when Dr. Welton released the information on creek testing that we talked a little bit about last week. So I'll be very curious to see if it lines up on the residential testing and if they've done any of this kind of soil testing to compare to what's happening here.
And I just want to read the last sentence because I think it kind of says it all. Results show that the detected chemicals occur at the levels below levels protective of people. From TASC's perspective, so TASC, the Technical Assistance Services for Communities. From TASC's perspective, this means that the soil is safe. So the first sentence, the EPA says this does not reflect the EPA's policies or position. The last sentence says, oh, this TASC, from our position, not from scientific fact, but from our position, it's safe. I'm going to read a comment and why I feel so strongly that it's not safe. I reached out to some experts this morning. They haven't gotten back yet. So I reached out to somebody that unfortunately has had to become an expert. So I reached out to Melissa Mays, who you guys know from Flint. She's a resident. She's one of the top activists. She has been trained in water contamination, air contamination, soil contamination by Erin Brockovich, Bob Bocock, and others. She has traveled the country speaking about the poisoning of Flint, clean water, air, and soil. She read the test. We didn't have time to put this on the screen, so I'm just going to email you what she said. After reviewing the East Palestine train derailment review of City Park soil chemical analysis put forward by SKEO, a company contracted out. Very important. Again, the EPA is contracting this out to other companies. It's not the EPA doing the testing itself. I am very concerned that they are saying this weekend's festivities are safe. Major red flags for me in the statements that their statement may not reflect EPA policies or directives, but the city and state of Ohio are acting like it is. So that's the first sentence that we read. Next, only 7 spots in the park were tested, and unless they are only hiding Easter eggs in those 7 spots, this is useless. Speaking of useless, the tests were done March 9th and 10th, and due to how the world works, the construction being done, flooding and heavy winds, there is no guarantee, or in my opinion, possibility that the soil is the same. In plain English, there's been rain, storms, the air, there's been aeration by the creek, pumping contaminants out of the creek that's 500 feet or so away. So there's been a lot that's happened since these soil samples were taken. Also, the document states that there are numerous results beyond what the laboratory instrument can measure. So many results are, quote, uncertain, which that right there should have been a hard stop because public health should never be decided on anything that is, quote, uncertain. I could keep going, but just reading these, quote, qualifiers has me very worried about the safety of East Palestine residents, especially the little ones that will be running and playing in the park. To me, even suggesting everyone is safe is irresponsible, and there's too many uncertainties in this, quote, summary for any reasonable scientist or professional to tell people to go play in the park. Full disclosure, Melissa's not like a PhD. She's a resident in Flint. She's been fighting for 8 years. She has, again, she's been trained by Erin Brockovich, Bob Bocock, who's got 30 years of experience in water engineering and water treatment. She knows about soil testing because there were soil problems in Flint with the lead as well. She knows what she's talking about. And I didn't even need to talk to her when the first sentence said the EPA, these are not the EPA's policies or positions. 2 + 2 = 4 and water is wet. We got to move on to the next topic, but at the end of the day, and there's more in this testing. And again, I'll put the PDF in the chat if you want to read through it. If they are saying in the test, if you see the letter J, U, and one other letter, it basically means that the results with those letters are imprecise, not what does it say? Imprecise. It tells you the accuracy and precision. When a result is qualified with a letter J, U, or other, that means the result is outside the ability of the laboratory instrument to measure it with accuracy and precision. In English, that means it's not reliable. It's not reliable. And I understand it because we live in the United Corporations of America, and East Palestine has been sold out by the state government and the federal government. They should have Medicare for all right now. Frankly, the federal government or the state should be paying people's bills. They should have evacuated the whole goddamn town. And trust me, if it was a wealthier area, they would have, and they would have kept them out. But I understand it. If you read the article that's announcing this, they got a lot of festivities, egg hunt, an auction of some sorts. The day will festivities will get underway at 9 a.m. with breakfast with the Easter Bunny, pancake and sausage breakfast, treat bags sponsored by the East Palestine Rotary Club. Chinese auction will be held with the breakfast. Then you have the Easter egg hunt. Then you have
there was something about going to businesses around town and collecting tickets as well to, you know, earn some sort of prize at the end. But again, even in town, like this is now separate from the park. In town, there are still aerators like right on the edge of downtown East Palestine where they're aerating this stuff with businesses close by, with people's homes close by. It doesn't make sense to just be trying to bring in extra people. It really doesn't. I don't get it. I really don't get it.
Well, I do get it. I get why they're doing it, because there is a friction, because we live in this fucking economic Hunger Games, and there's a friction. Small businesses have been hurt. The town has been hurt economically. A lot of vendors won't even come to the town to fix your washing machine. You know, contractors won't come to people's homes because it's contaminated and they don't want to come. So I get it, this whole back to normal mentality. The problem is, forget chemistry, forget science. Just look at that plume. Just look at the explosion. You think it's going to be back to normal after 2 months? It might never be completely back to normal, because with dioxins and other things, it's extremely hard to take that contamination out of any community. But I'm just saying, I think you don't play around, particularly with children, but anybody. The EPA, we don't have time to get into it. The EPA exists to protect business, to protect economic development, which is a huge buzzword. There's a lot of great people at the EPA that I've talked to that are deathly afraid to go on the record. Also, there's some people at Norfolk Southern who are good, don't want to go on the record, that I've talked to. But the top of the EPA, this is exactly like Flint. Look the other way, declare everything fine, have some bullshit testing. People know it's not fine. Lewis knows it's not fine because we're talking to residents every day. Lewis has been there. And it's not like residents had short-term symptoms and now they're better.
No.
The symptoms are continuing. And we just read you that test. Again, 3 bullets. EPA is basically saying we're not, it's almost like, it's like one of these commercials, like at the end of a drug commercial,
listing all your side effects.
They say like, so-and-so does not stand by blah, 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 blah. The EPA is saying, we're not saying this, but you could use our name. The letters, if you look at the page with the soil contamination levels, the letters itself are littered with those letters that mean not precise or completely accurate. And this was taken a month ago. Please be smart. I'm not going to tell parents whether you're a good or bad parent. It's up to you. I know you want your kids to have a normal holiday and a normal life. Maybe take them to a park 5-10 miles down the road, not right in town. We got to move on because I don't want to make our next guest wait. There's another huge story that Lewis has been working on. Lewis, I'll let you take the lead on this. I don't know how you want to do it, if you want to read from the story or just kind of give the bullets, but continues our theme of the United Corporations of America. And folks, the story is on our Substack. The link is in the description. I think the link is somewhere. I don't know if Colin put it at the top of the super chat. Please read the story, share the story, and sign up for our Substack, which you could do for free. You could take it from here, Lewis.
Yeah, so I'll just give the bullet points here. Essentially, I'll read the headline: "Pay for your poisoning. East Palestine residents to be taxed on disaster reimbursements, despite Norfolk Southern assuring them otherwise." And since it's right here, I'll read Chrissy's quote as well, and I'll kind of set up the rest of it. But Chrissy Ferguson, a resident I've spoke with quite a bit, she's done interviews on the channel. She said, "When I asked Norfolk why I needed to fill out the tax form, which was a W-9, they responded, 'It is only for our tax write-offs. It doesn't affect you.'" Which, come to find out, is absolute BS at this point. I have now spoken with probably a 10 or so residents at this point who've all confirmed the exact same story. Norfolk Southern has also confirmed to me that, yes, residents have had to fill out W-9 forms when they are going to get reimbursement for things, predominantly lodging. But they also confirmed to me that at the end of the year, Norfolk Southern will be sending a 1099 form to any resident who received more than $600 for their reimbursements. Now, as somebody who is an independent contractor, I do independent contract work for Status Coup. I do independent contract work for probably 6 or 7 other folks as well. And I fill out W-9 forms for all of this. I get a 1099 at the end of the year so that I can pay taxes on that income. So this is absolutely outrageous. And unfortunately, a lot of residents, and you know, I encourage you all to go read that story, share that story, because in that, I spoke with several other residents. One of them, Jamie Wallace, who we've had on here quite a bit, you know, she was there in the situation and she was like, okay, you know, my house is 20 feet from Sulphur Run. Sulphur Run is heavily contaminated. My option is, one, sign this W-9 so that I can get this reimbursement money and get my family the hell out of here. Or if she didn't take it, she was unfortunately going to be stuck there. The median income in East Palestine is roughly $27,000, $28,000 a year. Most of these folks, unfortunately, do not have the money to go just on their own, willy-nilly, be like, oh, I'm going to go stay in this hotel down the road for the next week. Unfortunately, folks don't have that kind of money laying around. And it's not just in East Palestine. It's in a lot of places across the country. Folks don't have that kind of money. So Jamie's sitting there. She asks about the W-9. And they tell her the same story that they told Chrissy, that, oh, it's for our purposes only. It's not going to affect you. And, you know, Jamie had a feeling like this didn't seem right, but she didn't really have a choice. And
let's read directly from the story. Yeah. Jamie, who was online, like other residents for hours at this reimbursement center, she used to be an HR director. So she was suspicious when she was asked to fill out a W-9. She said, when I was handed a W-9 the first day, I went to the Norfolk Southern Assistance Center. I questioned why I had to fill out the form. By the way, her home is right next to the creek, the contaminated creek. I asked directly if reimbursements were taxed. The gentleman assured me it was for Norfolk Southern tax purposes. I was an HR director for years and knew I was being lied to. But without the reimbursement, I didn't have enough money for another night at the hotel. At this point, lies don't surprise me. So Norfolk Southern's officials at the reimbursement center say, no, you're just filling this out. It's for our tax purposes. You're not going to be taxed. She's not the only one who was told that. If you go up in the story, Chrissy Ferguson, who Lewis has interviewed before, some significantly questionable testing was done at her home. Mm-hmm. When I asked Norfolk why I needed to fill out the tax form W-9, they responded, it is only for our tax write-offs. It doesn't affect you. Well, either these residents are imagining things, lying, or Norfolk Southern did a bait and switch.
Yeah. And you know what, just to push the
one
point
more,
home,
one more, because we got one more.
That's what I was going to say. Yeah, let's get Zhuja.
Zhuja, hope I'm pronouncing it right. Zhuja Gayenis, whose son has had health problems since the derailment. She's had a lot of health problems. She said, Brandon from Norfolk Southern continued to tell me no one would get taxed whatsoever, and it was only for Norfolk Southern's tax purposes. He explained that they have their own insurance and it would be paid for by Norfolk either way. The very first time I went, I signed the W-9 and I was told I wouldn't be taxed on it. Well, what did Norfolk Southern tell you, Lewis?
Well, they told me, like I said at the start of this, when they replied to my request for comment, and they said that, yes, residents have been getting W-9 forms, and at the end of the year, anyone who received more than $600 is going to get a 1099 for it. So I asked about, you know, the questions here that I'm hearing from residents of them, you know, not knowing that they're going to be taxed. We don't have a response from them on that, unsurprisingly. They also did say that they cannot provide tax advice to residents. So that's great. And I'll say too, that's 3 residents, but I've talked to several other residents that we don't have a direct quote from who are saying exactly the same thing. So don't think that this is just 3 people. It's basically every single person that I call and I ask, hey, did you fill out any forms that felt out of the ordinary when you were there? Did you fill out any tax forms or anything? And they're all like, oh yeah, I filled out a W-9. And a lot of these folks, unfortunately, again, unless you do contract work, you don't know what a W-9 is. I even forget when I do it, it's like, oh wait, do I fill out a W-9 or a W-4? Like all this stuff is not super straightforward unless you're in the weeds on this all the time and need to do that sort of stuff for work. If you're being told, no, it's not going to affect you, it's not going to affect you, and you need the money, you're probably not going to ask that many questions. Like I probably wouldn't ask many questions about it. So it's a, like you said, absolute bait and switch. These folks were being lied to from what we can tell. And it's just, it's another small, not another small thing. This is a big thing because there are potential ramifications that will come from this. And this is in another story that we're working on here, but you look like you want to interject here. Go for it.
Yeah, I'm sorry. What the fuck kind of country is this? Okay? I don't give a shit if you support the Ukraine war, you don't support the Ukraine war, you think Russia's great, you think Russia's bad. It doesn't matter. Every other minute, every other day, I'm hearing we're sending billions more to Ukraine. Whether you agree with it or not, irrelevant. How do we have all this money to send everywhere else? But people who have been poisoned, and yes, they've been poisoned. This is not like a, temporary stench. This is not, that foul smelling egg shit you smell. Like, oh, the shower smells like an egg. This is petrochemical bomb that was detonated over these people's small village. And by the way, it's not just East Palestine. We have shown, Lewis has shown, this has gone possibly as far as 50 to 100 miles, possibly further. And these people hey, this is just a regular tax thing here, even though you don't want, it's not like you wanted to go to a hotel. They're not putting them up at the plaza.
No.
They're having to relocate with their kids, their animals in small hotel rooms for weeks, having to take their kids out to do, remote learning. And these people are going to be taxed on reimbursement for their unwanted relocation, for their poisoning. And Norfolk Southern, shocking, got back to Lewis the first time. But then when you approach them, wait a minute. Residents are telling me you told them the exact opposite. Suddenly they lost your email. They can't respond. This is fucking sick. It's disgusting. What kind of country do we live in? We're going to poison people and then add to their bill? By the way, Lewis, correct me if I'm wrong. The average income in 2020 was $27,000.
Yep.
In East Palestine?
Yep.
These people don't have another 100, 200, 300, however much is going to be added to their taxes for hotel reimbursements. And it's not just the hotel reimbursement. There's other derailment-related expenses.
And again, too,
they're getting reimbursement for.
It's not even to like the railroad is also reimbursing their other costs, like the cost of the home that they lived in before. These people are, yes, they're relocating to these hotels, and that's what the reimbursement money is for in most of these cases, but they're still paying rent. They're still paying their mortgages in the houses that they can't stay in town because they are contaminated, even though in a lot of cases they were told, oh, it's fine, buy, again, circle back to the beginning of this, buy air testing devices that even the EPA themselves admit cannot pick up the chemicals at the right levels. And in other research that we've done, cannot even pick up at all any of the chemical byproducts in a lot of cases of these things. So it's safe to go back. They can't actually go back, though. They're getting money to be relocated. They're going to get taxed on it. They're still paying their lease or their rent. They're still paying their mortgage. They're still having to go through all these other expenses. And now they're on top of all of this, going to get taxed on money that it's not like it's going into their pocket. It's not like they're pocketing all this extra cash and they're fucking rolling in the money, basically. No, they're using this money to stay in a hotel room. And in a lot of cases too, it's like, okay, we're staying in the hotel right now. And then, oh, now this hotel is sold out and you've been here for 5 nights. And now you get to pick up all your stuff again and go move across town to another hotel. And in between, you're now, you work in East Palestine still. So you've got a half an hour commute back and forth that you didn't have before. So you're spending more money on gas. You're staying in a hotel, so you don't have a place to cook inside. So you're now needing to eat out a whole lot more or eat food that you can cook in a microwave. It's not just like one element of this. There's a whole lot of things that these people are unfortunately having to go through. And again, to be taxed on top of it is an absolute slap in the face and absolutely should not happen at all.
I could go on for another half hour.
Yeah.
We have a guest, and
Yes.
he changed his schedule for us, so I'm going to go to him in a minute or two.
Yes.
I'm just going to end on this. What's next? Are we going to change child labor laws in Ohio so the little kids that are Easter egg hunting in the toxic fucking soil, we're going to change child labor laws so they could clean up the town and we'll just take the professionals out?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this is fucking vile. And I know there's a lot going on right now. I know Trump was indicted and all the hubbub around that. I know Tennessee and, Tina, I believe, is covering that later. Tina will be having her broadcast at 5 o'clock Eastern. And these representatives who were expelled, it just so happens, 2 black guys were expelled from the Tennessee, but the white woman, she wasn't expelled. Go figure. Over protesting, over kids being massacred. I mean, it's one sick dystopian 1984 Orwellian story after the next. But at a certain point, people need to stand up. This is not about like if you're progressive or liberal or neoliberal or conservative. At a certain point, how much extra victimization are we going? We're re-victimizing the victims over and over and over again. You're giving them bullshit testing and bullshit proclamations that it's safe to take your kids to a park for 7 hours. You're taxing them. I don't care if it's an extra $1 that they have to pay in taxes. It's wrong. They should be getting reimbursements back and plus interest. And you're going to tax them for reimbursements for hotel stays and this and that. And by the way, where the fuck is Ohio Senator Sherrod Brown? Where is J.D. Vance, who did some photo ops in East Palestine, the Republican senator who has said some good stuff on East Palestine? Kind of sounds like he actually cares. Do you know about this, Sherrod Brown? J.D. Vance? Governor DeWine, 2 months later, has not issued a state of emergency? You awake? This is not like a normal thing. Well, hey, it's an IRS rule. If they get over $600 in income, it's not income. Colin, we need to clip this out. Let's try to make it go viral. I'm sorry to cut it short, but I have to go to my next guest. Everybody, please check out Lewis's Substack piece. Lewis, give people, because I know you're continuing to dig, a preview, because that's only part 1.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, unfortunately, because this is looking like it's taxable income, not looking like it is taxable income, and we talked about the median income in East Palestine being roughly $27,000 a year. That leaves a lot of residents on programs such as Medicaid for health insurance. It leaves folks, needing SNAP benefits, and unfortunately, this additional income is very likely going to put a lot of residents above the threshold for being able to receive those programs, even though this income isn't necessarily, or this income isn't adding to their actual money they're making for the year, because it is going directly to the costs associated with this derailment that were not caused by these residents, but were fully caused by Norfolk Southern. So there are potential implications for Medicaid and SNAP benefits. We have started to receive some response from the state and county offices. The information we're getting them from right now is unclear at best, but I am very concerned about the potential for these folks, on top of all of this, to now lose their Medicaid benefits, to potentially lose their SNAP benefits, which is it's ridiculous. It's I hope that it's not the case, but it really looks like it's going to be. So if you're not subscribed on the Substack already, I'm already working on the next piece of this, which is going to go in there. Definitely subscribe there. If you're watching this for the first time and you have not seen us, press the subscribe button down below. You can press the bell for notifications. That's an easy, free way to be able to help us out. And then the other thing is, I've been to East Palestine twice. Jordan's going to Flint again very soon. The only way we're able to do that is because of membership, like Vicky Jordan, who just joined right now. Please, if you're able to become a member, do so for literally as low as $5 to $10 a month. StatusCoup.com/join is the best place to do that. You can also do it on YouTube right there, but this is some frustrating shit, unfortunately. And the only way we're going to continue to be able to tell this story and continue to report on this is by folks like you becoming a member, literally $5 a month. That's all we're asking for. StatusCoup.com/join. But Jordan, I'll let you get to your next guest here.
And by the way, people, the rage I have, it exists in Lewis. It's going to take a while. We're going to get it out of him. We're going to get it out of him. You will have a rant or two from Lewis. He's a little bit more sophisticated than I, but we're going to get it. Don't worry. Don't worry. He's doing God's work. And please smash that like button. But more importantly, if you want us to stay on East Palestine and there's other toxic hellholes, we need you to fund us. StatusCoup.com/join, like Lewis just said, $5 to $10 a month. StatusCoup.com/join. Thank you, Lewis. Hold on to your rage, because the next story is just as fucking disgusting. Thank you for joining me, Lewis. Joining me now is Scott Desnoyers. For you Status Coup viewers who have been around for a couple years, I think we interviewed you 2 years ago, and just unfathomable tragedy has fallen on your family, and you have really, really responded in a way that I think is admirable, fighting for justice and for some fucking accountability and common sense in this country. You have an event coming up Sunday that we'll be covering here at Status Coup live in New York. For those that don't know the story, as much as you want to share, tell the story of your son, the healthcare horror story, and how you responded to it.
Well, before I even get into that, Jordan, I'd like to thank you personally, because it was actually 4 years ago. And I recall when I first got involved, you were the one I was looking for to cover the story first. And I was a political illiterate back then, and I knew nothing. But it was your passion that drove me to find you. So thank you, brother, so much. You were the first one that interviewed me, and thank you, brother. So anyway, yeah, what you were saying, it was 4 years ago that I got involved, because my son Daniel had come home to live with me. He was 29 years old, and he'd been in the domestic dispute. And a couple of weeks after he'd been home, he comes to me, he goes, "Pops, I went to get my medicine refill today and found out my insurance been canceled." I'm like, "Okay, Danny, this isn't a big deal. You know, how much is your medicine?" And he told me it was $250. And today I still don't have $250, you know? The medication was risperidone, which is an atypical antipsychotic with a known risk of suicide upon withdrawal. So we told Danny, "Okay, we have an appointment with your therapist in a couple of weeks. I'm sure she can help you out. In the meantime, you need to get a hold of Fidelis Care and find out what's going on." Now, Fidelis Care is one of the managed Medicaid programs that is available here in New York, and he purchased this through the ACA program. It's owned by Centene, which is the largest beneficiary of the managed Medicaid program through the ACA. Now, when Danny called, he found out that they just added a new $20 payment to Medicaid patients for a premium that made over a certain dollar amount. So he pulled out his wallet, he made his payment that day, and they told him his plan would be reinstated in the next billing cycle of May 1st. Again, he'd already been without his medication already a couple of weeks at this point. And it was on April 9th of 2019 that I saw his suicide post on Facebook. And I want to give a trigger warning to anybody who has problems with suicide stories, because this is downright horrid. I see an image of Danny's truck overlooking the water. And I saw this post 32 seconds after he did it. He said, "I just want everyone to know that I love them. I'm saying goodbye. This world wasn't meant for me. Maybe the next life will be better. I super glued my seatbelt, double checked. I don't have the strength to open it. And I choose death by drowning because I can't get above this pain. I'm sorry for hurting those who care. This is selfish, I'm sure. But I've been staring at the water for hours now, and I've made my decision. Daniel and Hazel, his children, I'm so fucking sorry." And he drove his truck into the Mohawk River that day. Now, I lived 5 minutes from Saratoga Lake, and I didn't recognize the water, so I'd assume that's where he was. And I jumped in my car and raced down to the lake to try to catch him, try to save him. I'm looking for water, that's disturbed, mud in the water, something like that. And after a while, like 20 minutes, I realized there's no way my son could have survived. Any human could have survived this long. And I had to turn around, drive back to tell my wife that her boy was dead because he was late paying $20 to his fucking Medicaid program. So I've done everything. I promised Danny at his funeral that I'm going to make our lawmakers look me in the eye and see the consequences of their decisions. I had no idea how I was going to do that, but because of people like you, Danny's story got heard, and I do that on a regular basis. And last year on April 9th, we held a protest in front of Fidelis Care's main headquarters in
I just want to, sorry to interrupt, but I want to make the point. When Daniel was on the medication, his mental health issue was for the most part under control, and he was able to function. And
it was, he actually had anger control issues, and he knew it was wrong to beat people up. So he had to control his anger, and he worked really hard. He used to train with a Rocco Shoko just to get his aggression out and not take it out on people. Well, yeah, the medication was working. And it was a side effect that drove him to suicide. It was that withdrawal, that chemical imbalance. And when you research it, it shows you that the chemical imbalance is at its most severe 2 to 3 weeks after you stop taking the medication. That's exactly the time frame that Danny took his life. Danny was a fighter. This pain that withdrawal gave him was more than my son could fight. That's why I use the hashtag Danny Strong, you know? He was strong as hell. And they took that hope from him because he was late paying $20 to his Medicaid plan. Now, the founder of Fidelis Care is a Father Patrick Frawley, an ordained priest of the Brooklyn Catholic Diocese. And he sold Fidelis Care to Centene in 2018 with the advancement of the ACA's Managed Medicaid program for $3.8 billion. Subsequently, he then started a nonprofit charity that doesn't have a lot of openness to it. So basically he got a tight tax write-off for that whole $3.8 billion because that's what he started that for, was $3.8 billion, right? It pays no taxes on the whole $3.8 billion. And then gets promoted to VP of Centene and get this title, Social Responsibilities, for $4.9 million a year to deny Medicaid patients, the poorest among us, the health care they need to live. And I have not been able to find a picture of Father Patrick Frawley without his collar on as he's selling this contracts to the poorest among us, knowing that he's going to deny care. His corporation is going to deny care and someone will die so that he can get paid. Well, last year, our demand was for Father Frawley to either step down from his position of legalized manslaughter for profit or to renounce his title of priest. This year, April 9th, is not only the date that we lost Danny, but it's also Easter Sunday, as we know. And I cannot think of a better day to call out the hypocrisy of our for-profit healthcare system. And we are no longer allowing Father Frawley to deny his teachings that he claims to be so prominent on. We are saying, if you are a man of God, you need to renounce legalized manslaughter. And as repentance, he needs to fight along our side with us, as did Wendell Potter from Cigna for single-payer universal health care. That includes New York Health Act, it includes whole Washington, Mass Care, Cal Care, and every other place we can get these insurance mobsters from our healthcare industry, because contracts are not healthcare. And that is what both parties are constantly selling us. They both say that party's raising your healthcare. Well, that one's trying to take your healthcare away. Neither of them are talking about healthcare. They're both talking about health insurance, and they're both lying to us and selling us health insurance.
I want to, there's a lot of different aspects to this I want to get to, but first I want to show a picture of your son, who was a father in addition to your son. So this is you and Daniel. I assume that's Daniel with his kid. Young guy. Can you tell us a little bit about Daniel? Just what kind of father he was?
Well, not just who he was as a father, starting off from way back, one thing we all have to remember is our firstborn child is our first realization of what unconditional love is. Danny could ride his bike and get in trouble and brought home by the cops on a mall roof, and I'd still love him. He could tell me he got in a fight because some kid was beating up somebody and he beat up the bully, and I'd still love him. He could come home drunk one day and tell me he's drunk, and I'd still love him. There's nothing your children can do that breaks that bond. And Fidelis Care took that from me because he was late paying $20. But like I said, Danny did have anger issues, but he also had a pure heart. When he was younger, he actually started a group called the Snoochie Boochies, and I guess there's some others where he said he got that title from. But their whole thing was they were a non-gang, and they wanted to beat up the bullies, vigilante style. And I explained to Danny that it's still violence, and you can't do that. Which is why he started, getting onto medications and stuff and not beating up people. But yeah, he was a father, and he was going through a lot of problems with addiction, and those addiction caused problems with his children. And that was the main demon that drove him, is he loved his children as much as I loved my children. And he was not going to do anything to jeopardize that. He stopped all of his drug usage. He stopped getting into trouble with the law because he loves his children and he wanted them back.
I want to bring something up that I don't even know if you know this, Scott. Some viewers know it. I've mentioned it maybe one other time, but I think it's important to mention. I personally, back in 2015, it's a very long story, but to just give the cliff notes, I've suffered with depression on and off my whole life. Sometimes it's gotten really bad. Other times it's just kind of been low level. But in 2015, I had issues. I was hopped up on Ambien, among other things, and my depression just became severe, and I started having panic attacks, which I never experienced before. And I never really devised a plan, but I started having suicidal thoughts, and that really scared me. And I was sleeping in bed, and I looked over, and I had I realized, wow, I'm taking 5 or 6 sets of pills here, Ambien and several other things. And the only difference between Scott and I was I turned to my mom, and at the moment I had healthcare, but even if I didn't, my mom would have had the $250 to take me to the doctor or pay for the medication. We're not like rich, but had that amount of money. And thank God, I went to a psychiatrist who said you need to be evaluated. I went inpatient to a psychiatric facility for a week. Right away, they said, you're on a bunch of medications that I don't know who prescribed all this for you, but this one and this one don't get along. And basically, my depression was being worsened by the medication interactions.
Right.
After they released me after a week, because this hospital was just a holding cell, basically, they didn't actually give you any treatment. I relapsed and started feeling suicidal again. And I went to a different hospital for 3 weeks. They got me on the right antidepressant. They got me off all the shit I was on. And within 3 months, I was back to myself. I got into a relationship. And within 6 months, I got the job at the Young Turks and started traveling the country. And frankly, finally kind of, made it to a certain degree in my career. That's the difference. That's the difference between literally life or death, because it could have got worse for me. Ideas could have changed to a plan and doing something, because you're not in your right mind at that point. The illness has taken over at that point. But thankfully, I had the healthcare, the family that could afford it, and I got the care I needed. And then I finally got some good things happening in my life. That's the difference And the same
Your
thing
story
could have
sounds-
happened for your son if not for this horrible company who should have had safeguards in place, because they should have known what medications the patient is on, the side effects if you toss them off, and what could happen. Go ahead.
Yeah. I was going to say your story is exactly just like Justin Jackson explains in the documentary that you've heard about, Healing Us. He talks about how, he lost his mom when he was young, and, he didn't understand when he was young about how that money, would have impacted another family, or how that all the money they were paying for the bills and stuff, and that his father was able, to pay for those bills, and still he went through college. But what if he was somebody like in my position, his dad wouldn't have been able to cover those bills. He wouldn't have been able to go to college, and he wouldn't have been a professional football star, and it's because of the healthcare system that's set up the way it is, where some can make it and some cannot. My dental situation is screaming testimony of that. I've been working for 5 years trying to get a dentist appointment. I finally got one 2 weeks ago, and I'm hoping that I can get these fixed before the premiere of the documentary coming up. But I'm going to be screaming into a bullhorn with these rotten ass teeth, and people are going to hear me whether I can get health care for my teeth or not.
And obviously, you're from New York, so obviously Senator Charles Schumer has been leading the charge on your behalf. Senator Kirsten Gillibrand, I'm sure, has been doing plenty to support your cause.
Yeah.
AOC, I'm sure, has been there every step of the way. I'm sure the Republican politicians from New York are literally have Daniel's picture up. Kamala Harris, who at that time was the senator, mentioned your son. Now she's the vice president.
Yes.
For as far as I could tell, she used your son as part of a speech and photo op. I'm sure all of these wonderful representatives have been leading the charge for health care for all in New York and for Danny's legacy.
Well, I do like to see your anger, so I'd like to point out that Kamala Harris's tweet was actually a bit more perverse than that. If you actually reread her tweet, it says no one should get cut from their insurance. And then 3 weeks later, she introduced her Medicare for All plans, which was for corporations like Centene to sell us Medicare. Her plan was a gift to the insurance industry that I said was responsible for killing Danny. She used Danny's story as a commercial for the ones who murdered him. That's what Kamala did. So no, the Democrats are not rallying behind me. I sent an email to AOC's office, and I got a response from her office saying that she is not interested with meeting me at this time. I don't know. But I will give her kudos and the fact that she has shown support for the New York Health Act, which is why I actually reached out to her. And I expressed to her that I was on the Force the Vote panel where Jimmy Dore called her a sellout. I actually spoke before Jimmy Dore did on that panel. And I remember her outrage about being called a sellout. I don't remember her outrage about Danny, though. As a matter of fact, she has never retweeted Danny or anything about Danny's story. And I really would like her to come back on board with Medicare for All. We could use her in this fight, honestly. Like you said, I don't care if you're a centrist, a liberal, a conservative. We need everybody on this fight. We have a doctor out in Utah who is a conservative Mormon writing a single payer bill that includes reproductive rights, that includes LGBTQ protections. We need everybody.
I think all the stories we've been covering today, including East Palestine, they're all connected in one way or the other. Obviously, they're different, but at the end of the day, they're putting kids' lives, in my opinion, in danger tomorrow in East Palestine, allowing them to Easter egg hunt in a park in the middle of a community that's been bombed, basically to get back to normal because capitalism. Your son,
you saw my
who
facial
had
expressions. I was horrified.
Yeah. Your son, no fault of his own. Mental health issues are the same as physical issues. You just can't see them as easy. Had an illness, but $20. By the way, I've heard people get cut off for $5, an overpaid bill. I mean, the systems are automated at this point, so it's not even humans reviewing it. They just, oh, you didn't pay? We're not even going to look what they're on or what the condition is or what the side effects are. If we cut them off, cut off. I mean, you can't call a country, Scott. You can't say this is the beacon on a hill and the best country on earth. I mean, hell, Cuba doesn't treat its citizens like this. They have good health care. Europe doesn't treat its citizens like this. They have health care. Why the hell do you think people in France are out storming BlackRock like it's the Bastille? I have to give my wife credit for that one. She gave me the idea for that tweet. Why do you think they're able to protest like that? Just over raising the retirement age by 2 years. Because they have basic benefits like health care. So they have a little bit more flexibility to protest because they're not deathly afraid of losing their job. I mean, it's just disgusting. And when I think of your grandkids and being without a father, I'm a new father, and it's so unjust and unfair. And, you know, a lot of people, Scott, in your position, and I know your wife has gone through hell, would have succumbed and just quietly gone away. But the fact that you've been fighting, you know, Danny should be proud. Let's talk about, by the way, there's a documentary coming out. So let's talk about that, but also the event Sunday that we'll be covering starting at noon.
Yeah. So yeah, that event is going to be at, as you just mentioned, on noon on Easter Sunday in front of Fidelis Care's regional office in Rego Park, which is 95-0163rd Drive. I guess you guys have really strict street addresses down there, so make sure you get that one right. We have people coming in from across the country as speakers. We have support from whole Washington for the New York Health Act, and we actually have their vice chair speaking at the event, as well as people. We have a Red Beret coming from California who started the California Red Berets. We got people coming in from Massachusetts, almost Florida. But we will be speaking about the for-profit healthcare system and the hypocrisy therein. We will also be amplifying state-based efforts such as the New York Health Act as our way forward. Because what a lot of us believe is we have no path forward right now at a national level. That doesn't mean we stop putting pressure on our legislators. That means we have to find other ways to get these lives saved at the same time. State-based legislation such as the New York Health Act and whole Washington could remove the predatory insurance industry from these couple of states and get more of a groundswell going. Furthermore, it would also hurt the insurance industry financially, which they would then raise premium copays, deductibles elsewhere to make up for it, as they always do, making them look even more monstrous and hideous, giving us a better path forward. We have to unite all of these state-based legislation together in one single mass army, because they've already got, the insurance companies already spending money in every single one of these states. And without a national movement, we're not going anywhere. And now people could say what they want about Bernie. When he said, not me, us, my thought is he knew when he got in a place where he is like now, where, you know, he has the power to do something that he couldn't, because he's in the Democratic Party now. And what they say goes, not what he wants. And he knew he'd have to shut his mouth when they told him to, and it would be on us to take this up. So whether you agree with Bernie or not, it's still on us. And you know that. You know, I mean, we all know that. So, yeah, I just need people to show up and hold signs and shout that this ain't right. And I need people to get involved. I need people to get involved in calling their legislators. I need people to get involved in writing their newspapers. We need everybody to do what they can before they have the incentive like I have, right?
And I just, by the way, for folks who want more information, I just put the Facebook page for Sunday's event in the description under the live stream. So just go into the description and click on the Facebook event. If you're in New York, I mean, you know, it's Easter. So obviously if you celebrate Easter and can't make it, you know, support on social media. Definitely watch us because we'll be live. I'll be coming out to cover it myself. Yeah, the last thing I'll say is, to me, this is not, it's not a political issue. It's not about Bernie or AOC or the politicians who sell us out or anything. This is about life or death, plain and simple.
Yep.
Because your
it's
son,
blood money.
Yeah.
And that's why we're the richest nation in the world, because we love blood money, as you have covered on many different issues.
And by the way, Joe Biden said a lot of things. We're going to restore the soul of the country. We got to fight fascism. Well, I think it's pretty fucking fascist when government and corporate America collide to cut people off of their health care over $20. Not all forms of fascism. Look it up. You got the Hitler kind of fascism, but there's also something called corporate fascism. It existed in Standing Rock. It's happening right now, in my view, in East Palestine, in Flint. And when the government and the corporate state become one, that is fascism. That is fascism.
Yep.
And part of what ushers in an escalated form of fascism, like we saw in Germany and other places, is economic desperation. And that's what's happening here. I don't give a shit what they say about the jobs report and GDP and the stock market. I've been around the country for 7 years, and I've talked to enough people. We're living in a new Gilded Age. And unfortunately, Scott's son was one of the victims of that. But we got to keep fighting. And I'm looking forward to covering this on Sunday. And by the way, we don't have enough time, but it is just so fitting that the head of Fidelis is a fucking priest, because we all know about the church in this country. Scott, any parting words? Where should people go for more information? Like I said, I put the Facebook page in the description. If you want to tell them about the documentary that's coming out.
Yes, real quick on the documentary. We have 3 actually of the cast members of Healing Us speaking at this event. And the documentary is called Healing Us. You can find information about it at healingusnetwork.com. It's narrated by Susan Sarandon. Oh my God, she's been such a blessing to the movement and to all of us. And it goes basically into what I was basically saying, in the fact that we need to unite. We need a movement of national proportion in every way possible. There are those who disagree with state-based legislation. And okay, fine. If you're okay with national single payer, let's fight together there. And let's not tear each other apart where we disagree, and fight together where we can. But yeah, healingusnetwork.com. Awesome movie. We had people like Brianna Joy Gray is in it, Wendell Potter, as well as Amy Villela. I'm sure you remember her story, how she lost her daughter, Shalyn. She was also part of the squad and part in a documentary, Knock Down the House, with her daughter's story. But yeah, some great people really fighting hard. And thank you so much, Jordan, for being one of those people.
Absolutely. Thanks for coming on. See you Sunday, and keep up the fight.
Much love, brother.
Absolutely. We got one more story and guest. We're going to get back to East Palestine. Keep smashing that like button. Keep sharing this live stream. The more people that press like, the more people that will see this. Joining me now is Alex from United for East Palestine, which is a group that's formed there. You and I have been talking. I don't know if you saw the earlier parts of the stream, but concerning developments all around, if you ask me. But tell folks a little bit about United for East Palestine. You have some things coming up, I believe, next week, and what people should know.
Yeah. Hi, my name's Alex. Well, United for East Palestine started as a Facebook group that was founded by Jenna Giannis and Emily Musakia, who both live in the area. And what we have become since then is an organization that's mostly been focused on trying to get the resources that are potential resources outside of the community and bring them to bear inside of the community. We've been working with people like Professor Welton from Purdue University and his team, who have been phenomenal in doing independent testing of the water and soil around East Palestine and derailment to get open source, publicly available chemical testing done so we can see exactly what sort of chemicals they aren't telling us about. Professor Weldon has also done a phenomenal job of pushing back on the EPA and the Ohio state government regarding a lot of the scientific inconsistencies and bad practices they have put into their testing and putting those out on his Twitter, and also doing the amazing work of filing OSHA complaints against Norfolk Southern because of the egregious violations they put their workers through, having them do the cleanup with zero hazmat materials and no idea of what they were even cleaning up. We've also been working with Dr. Ghulam and her team, the Ghulam Research Institute, one of the more respected medical researchers in the United States, to try and get blood testing done to find out exactly what sort of toxicological impact the chemicals have had on people's bodies, to figure out the short-term and long-term impacts and be able to see exactly what this is doing to people in real time, instead of seeing them get sick 10 years later and having to prove it backwards, trying to get the answers right now. Our main focus has been trying to get people evacuated, or trying to get the government to admit there's a problem so that we can then get people evacuated at the rate that they should be, instead of just being lied to and gaslit. So that's one of the reasons why we're trying to get these testing done. And in regards to the event we're planning on the 15th is the Common Sense Summit. We're trying to get as many organizations as possible to come together with just a simple plan of simple agreements that clean air, clean water, and clean soil are absolute necessities for a functional society, and figure out how we can organize around that.
And what are your thoughts on the fact that it's taking community groups to form to get these resources, rather than the state providing the resources, the federal government providing the resources? I mean, it seems kind of backwards. I mean, it's not surprising to me, having dealt with other disasters, but why is it that normal people like you and others in your group need to do this when it should be your politicians delivering the economic resources, the environmental resources, accurate testing, which I have quite a lot of questions about the testing that has been done. Just seems pretty backwards.
Yeah, I mean, I agree in terms of that it's definitely not the sort of thing you would need for our society to function. But I also think that it's a predictable outcome of a society that has intentionally disenfranchised people outside of the hierarchical class of people who control either the money, which is the corporations, or the power, which is the government and the governmental sort of political class. And the only force that has ever been able to enact any change in either of those groups are in mass organizations of people coming together around centralizing issues to push for the sort of necessary changes we need in order to have a functioning society. I think that the government has been works overtime, and corporate media has been working overtime to gaslight people about this problem, to tell them that everything is fine, because they do not want people to be aware of the scope of the problem, because if they were aware of the scope of the problem, there would be pressure for them to change it, which is the last thing that they want to deal with.
And can I ask you, just to bring people a little update, if you read from or you listen to the Ohio governor or the EPA, the soil's testing fine, the water's testing fine, the air's testing fine. I don't hear any national media coverage anymore. Can you talk about, for you, friends, family, your neighbors? From what I'm hearing, people are still having serious health problems.
Absolutely, they are, and have been this entire time. And I just got out of a meeting with River Valley Organizing and a bunch of other scientists and organizers with the EPA, where we were able to ask some of those questions. And like always, their game plan has been obfuscation and political speak and making non-committal statements. In fact, one of the questions I asked them was if, since they were so confident in the work that they've done to keep people safe, if the EPA and the members of the EPA currently working on this project are willing to accept legal responsibility for if and when people begin to get seriously sick, up to and including charges of criminal negligence. And of course, they refused to answer that question while pretending that they had. And I tried to press them on getting a yes or no, and of course, they wouldn't give me yes or no, because obviously the answer is no, but they don't want to say that. And that's basically been their modus operandi this entire time, has been just to prevent any sort of they've been, their whole thing has been tell people that they've been testing, tell people that they all the good work that they're doing, meanwhile being very opaque about what exactly happening, how these tests, what the methodology of this testing is, how they're coming to the conclusions they're coming to, based on what reasoning, and exactly what dangers people are actually being faced with. They're being very opaque about all of those things. We wouldn't even know those things if we hadn't had people like Professor Welton come in and actually see and take pictures and document the actual on the ground situation, how egregiously incompetent their testing methodology was, or people like Eric Copolino coming out and talking about dioxins and helping people find out about these things. The EPA still probably wouldn't have had Norfolk Southern test for them at all. So their goal in all of this seems to be to act as a wall of protection to keep Norfolk Southern and more broadly the larger corporate railroad sphere and larger corporate chemical sort of infrastructure, industrial infrastructure, safe from any sort of genuine scrutiny from the larger populace.
It's unbelievable. Tell people about the event coming up next week, how people can get involved if they live in East Palestine or outside of East Palestine if they want to get involved.
Yeah. So the event is online. We are trying to find we're working on getting some great keynote speakers. Savage Joy from March Medical for All will be speaking. We've reached out to some other people. We're hoping we can get some labor unions to come on and speak, maybe like 5 keynote speakers to come on and give a really great information to people regarding how the issue of the chemical waste and toxic pollution that's going into our air, waters, and soils is impacting all of us, and how we can come together around collectively working to fix that. Savage Joy Marie, obviously, her main issue is Medicare for all. She's very focused on seeing how like the medical impacts of this can be mitigated by single payer healthcare system. We're hoping to also get people from the Railroad Workers United to come and speak. We're hoping to get some people with maybe some larger platforms to come and speak. But what we really want is to get as many organizations as possible just to come to the meeting so we can say, hey, so we can form a coalition. We're calling it the Common Sense Coalition, where it doesn't matter where you fall, where your organization falls on any philosophical or political debate. It doesn't matter if you're a socialist or a libertarian, or if you're the hardcore capitalist cheerleader, or you are an anarchist or a Republican or a Democrat or a progressive, or whatever domination you think of yourself. Fundamentally, clean air, clean water, and clean soil are absolutely necessary for any kind of societal function. So what we're trying to do is get everybody to come together on the 15th for a common sense summit, so we can just come together on the basic agreements that those are 3 things we need, and there's the objective, clear scientific analysis that those things right now we don't have, and how we can work together to make it so that we have just 3 basic necessities of life: clean air, clean water, clean soil.
Amen. Yeah, we'll update our audience as we get there closer for that event, which will be online. So anybody could participate. Where could people go to find out more?
You can follow us on Twitter, United for EP, Instagram at United for EP, our Facebook group, United for East Palestine, Parentheses, Ohio, or United for EP. We'll take you to our Facebook page. Email us, unitedforep@gmail.com, or email our new Gmail, which is unitedfor.org, alex@unitedfor.org, if you would like to RSVP, or if you're interested in speaking.
Absolutely. I'll put not all of that, but one or two of those in the description after this, so people could take a look. Thanks, my man. Keep me in the loop.
Thank you so much for having me on. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. So that was Alex from East Palestine, United for East Palestine. I got to tell you, man, I'm just so pissed off, particularly today. I am just so fucking angry with these stories. I know, society and, the old corrupt corporate dinosaurs that pretend to be journalists say, well, reporters are supposed to just stand like, neutral robots and not have an opinion about anything. And if you have an opinion, you're not a journalist. Well, I disagree. I think first and foremost, what makes a journalist a good journalist or not is two things. Number one, are your facts correct? And if you get your facts wrong, which I did in one instance this week, you correct it and move on. Don't be afraid, because we're all imperfect. And if you're a journalist these days, you're working a mile a minute, and we all have insane deadlines to get videos out and written articles out and tweets out and a whole lot of other things. In our case, we're doing a whole lot with not a lot of resources. But number one, the most important thing about being a journalist is, are your facts right? And followed by that, why are you in this? Are you in this to climb a corporate ladder so you could be a primetime news anchor and make millions of dollars and have millions of Twitter followers? If that's why you're in it, I don't think that's the best reason. I think the real reason you should be in this journalistically is because you see that the image that the corporate media puts out there and that the government puts out there about this country is all smoke and mirrors and is all bullshit. And we don't live in the United States of America. We live in the United Corporations of America. Hence the flag. And yes, that means I have an opinion and I even have a bias. However, my opinion and my bias is to deliver the facts about the corruption in this country. Let me repeat, deliver the facts about the corruption in this country. If that's not your flavor, if you prefer neutral robots to just tell you, well, the Democrats say A and the Republicans say B and the corporations say C, we're neutral, so you fucking figure it out. I'm not your guy. I'm going to tell you who's lying. And I'll tell you, if you've watched this whole live stream, it's up to you. If you live in East Palestine, I'm not going to tell parents what to do. I'll tell you what I would do. I would not be taking my child to the city park tomorrow for an Easter egg hunt. I don't care how they dress it up or what they say about its safety. We went through the testing. If you believe that testing shows that that park is safe, then I think you need to reread that testing, particularly the parts where the EPA doesn't even stand by it, the parts that it's not the EPA who did the testing, it's a contractor, the parts that identify the specific letters that are next to the soil samples, J, U, and other. If those letters are next to the data, it means it's not completely accurate or precise. And the final sentence, which says, well, this is actually the contractor's opinion that it's safe. Secondly, if you don't see something severely wrong with Americans who have been made ill, dizziness, nausea, vomiting, chemical burns. I had another person, I didn't have time to get it together. I had another person send me photos before I went live of their rashes. One was all over her back. Another one was on her breast. She didn't send me a picture of her full breast, just the side. If my wife is watching. Hands that is on East Palestine city water, not well water, the city water that they're telling everybody is fine and have been telling everybody is fine. Well, now we find out after Norfolk Southern assured residents, oh no, we're having you fill out W-9 forms in order to give you reimbursements, but you're not going to be taxed on this reimbursement money. These forms are for you to fill out. It's just for our internal purposes, for our taxes. Now we're finding out from Norfolk Southern and others, yeah, no, you're going to be taxed on that reimbursement money. Some families have received thousands and thousands of dollars, rightfully so, for hotel stays and other expenses. You're going to be taxed on that. Well, besides the fact that that is completely ass backwards, that you're going to be taxed on, it's not income, it's reimbursement. Besides that, that is immoral. The average annual income in East Palestine as of 2020, I don't know, more recently, was $27,000. So people will potentially be taxed an extra couple $100 on their reimbursement for being poisoned. This is happening in America. Meanwhile, I think we've spent over $100 billion given to Ukraine, not to mention how much money we give to Israel and every other country around the world. But we're going to make the victims in East Palestine pay taxes for their unwanted hotel stays. These people don't want to be staying at hotels. They want to be in their homes. It's just crazy. And it really makes me angry that, aside from maybe one or two other YouTube channels, nobody else is covering this. I'm not saying only cover East Palestine. Of course, people should cover a lot of things. There's a lot of injustice in this country. There's a lot of corruption in this country. There's a lot of scandals in this country. But in my view, if a community has a petrochemical bomb explode over it, not 2 years ago, 2 months ago, maybe you shouldn't just quickly move on from that after covering it for a week. Damn right, my brain might fucking explode on live stream. Maybe that's not something we should just move on very quickly from. I don't think other countries, hell, if there's a mass shooting in New Zealand and Europe, they don't just cover that for 2 days and then move back to politics. They cover it for weeks. And if this happened in London, Germany, Australia, they'd still be talking about it in the media. In our country, we have media go places for a week, maybe 2. If it's really bad and you got images of, flames and black clouds, they'll go longer. And then they move on and they just regurgitate whatever bullshit comes out from the EPA. And I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I'm not saying never believe the EPA, never believe the government, but you shouldn't just uncritically, without actually looking at what they're saying, just regurgitate what they're saying. I mean, all I did yesterday, the EPA, well, it's not the EPA. It was released the soil samples that they took in this park where they're having the Easter egg hunt to declare it safe for the Easter egg hunt. I read it. I'm not equipped to fully understand it. I'm not an expert on it. So I reached out to a few people. Some got back to me, some didn't. And I reached out to Melissa, who knows this shit backwards and forward. All it took was a little effort. And I quickly found out, yeah, this is not at all precise testing. A lot of it's not even accurate. The EPA itself in writing says, I don't even completely stand by it. Yet it's safe. So come out, kiddies, 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. The problem with that, even if one kid gets sick, that's too many. It's just crazy. Whole thing is crazy. I ask you very, very kindly, if you are not yet a paying Status Coup member, if you are not yet a paying Status Coup member, please sign up today, statuscoup.com/join. Your membership helps us fund this reporting. On the ground, we want to send Lewis back to East Palestine for a third trip. I'm planning on going to Flint and Kalamazoo later this month. All of this costs money. Sunday, I'm going to be reporting live starting at noon from Scott's event outside Fidelis Care, who cut his son off of his insurance over a $20 bill, and his son killed himself. Next week, I'm going to be covering something probably next Friday out in Virginia. We'll have more on that in a little bit. But we need you. We can't fund this on our own. We're not getting money from Norfolk Southern. We're not getting money from the big banks, the oil companies, big pharma, Silicon Valley, none of them. Our funding comes from you. So if it's possible, please sign up. You can become a member for $5 to $10 a month. And it's the only way we could continue. I'd like to have Lewis on more. We'd like to send Lewis out more, but it costs money. It costs money. When you have to send out a reporter, a camera person, flights, hotels, rent a car, food. Right now, we're going back and forth via email because we need to get another live view, which is the broadcasting unit we use when we're on the road to go live. The one we have cost us $25,000 when we bought it a year ago. We're trying to get another one now so that we could cover more things, because I'm up in the New York area. Colin's back in Texas. So let's say Colin goes on the road with Lewis. Well, Colin and Lewis are in Texas. I'm up here. I have the live view. So we're not mailing a $25,000 unit. So we need another one, but it all costs money. We're probably not even going to be able to get the top of the line live view because we don't, it's expensive. Right now, we're trying to see what the prices are for the other ones, and we might try to get a used one as long as it works. But there's a lot that goes into this. So please sign up. Obviously, there's a lot of people that it's just not in your budget. It's not in your budget to, pay $5 to $10 a month, and that's fine if it's not. But if it is, please consider signing up. And by the way, we got 2 new YouTube members. So welcome. Vicky signed up as a YouTube member. Welcome. Bandon signed up as a YouTube member. Others, if you're considering consider signing up to our website. That's statuscoup.com/join. We appreciate, YouTube folks too, but YouTube takes a percentage, if you don't know, of your membership. If you come through our website, we get all that revenue. And as a member, by the way, you get certain perks, including our monthly Zoom call that we do through Zoom. So that's statuscoup.com/join. We do a monthly members call through Zoom. We're probably going to do ours probably next week or the week after. It depends on our travel schedule. And behind the scenes videos from our on the ground reporting. And we have a members only Discord channel. So definitely check all those things out. After I end this, remember Lewis's Substack piece on the fact that Norfolk Southern lied to East Palestine residents and they are going to be taxed on the reimbursement money. The link to that Substack is in the description under this live stream. So please, click the heart in the Substack article, share it if you can. Sign up to our Substack. You can sign up for free. There are paid options too, but there's a free option. The more people that sign up to Substack, that grows our email list, which is important. We try not to, spam you with too many emails, but we send out, Substack stories. We send out an email when we're going live, et cetera, et cetera. Let me read some super chats. Christina, $9.99. It's serious when Jordan takes off his glasses and yells, "Good for Status Coup. You're doing God work." Yes, when you get to see my black bags under my eyes, I have to yell, because if I don't, I'm going to end up doing destructive things. And if you're not yelling over the shit we're reporting on, you're not paying close enough attention. So thank you, Christina. Eliana, $49.99. Thank you so much. You are all such an underrated channel. I've been angered from this whole situation from day one. I'm an analytical chemist, not for the EPA, and chlorinated dioxin should have been tested in the beginning, but we know why. Yes, we do know why. Because there's a common theme, Eliana. and thank you so much for the super chat. You can't find what you're not looking for. You can't find what you're not looking for. And it's intentional what they're not looking for, not just in East Palestine, in Flint too. I've told the story over and over again. In Flint, residents I know were invited to the state environmental lab where they do the water testing. And there was this magnificent looking machine that had all these buttons and it looked world class. And they asked the lab supervisor, what's that machine? And the guy said, oh, this has the ability to test for every chemical on the periodic table. So we could test for every chemical on the periodic table in your water. So the resident said, oh, it's good to know, like, you guys are testing for all this stuff. And the guy said, oh, no, we're not actually using this to test. We're only allowed to test for lead. We're only allowed to test for lead and copper. So literally, they're not even using the machine that has the capability to test for all contaminants. You want to know why? And somebody told me this once, somebody at the EPA, because if the EPA wouldn't go on the record because they don't want to lose their job. If the EPA actually did legitimate, thorough testing, not just in Flint, not just in East Palestine, in all Superfund sites that are contaminated, at all landfills that are have a lot of contamination, literally the contamination in this country would cost tens of trillions to clean up. And frankly, a lot of it can't be cleaned up. Let me see if I missed anything before we go. By the way, we will be back at 5 o'clock Eastern with Tina's show. Colin, do you know what Tina's show is on about today?
Well, one, it may or may not be 5 Eastern. We're waiting on some stuff with the guests, so we'll maybe do a community post once we have a good idea of the time. But the topic, or actually I have some of it right here, has to do with everything from Justice Thomas to more disinformation on the COVID side being brought out that we got some studies to go over. And then obviously the, I forget what the segment's called, but where Tina goes over all the fun segments of different insane clips and all that. We got some very interesting ones today, that you guys will definitely want to strap in for.
So stay tuned for that. Definitely, if we have to change the time today because her guest had an emergency, we'll do a post in the community tab just to let you know what it is. Hopefully Colin's cat will join as well. I think she's going to have Walker Bragman on, who's a great independent journalist. But yeah, if you missed it, Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas, in addition to his wife trying to help Trump overthrow the election, which apparently Democrats were too spineless to try and impeach Justice Thomas for that from the Supreme Court. Now it's come out that he's taken God knows how much money in from wealthy right-wingers for travel and vacations. Exactly the type of integrity you want at the Supreme Court. I'm sure it doesn't affect his judgment or his rulings. So Tina will be on, we don't know yet. We hope 5, but maybe a little bit later. All right. Thank you so much for watching. Again, definitely check out Lewis's Substack piece. Share it if you can. Sign up as a member if you can. If you're already a member and you want to support us a little extra, you could always go to statuscoup.com/donate. And that's, a one-time donation, or you could set it for monthly donations, whatever floats your boat. And we will continue covering the East Palestine disaster and other things that the corporate media covers up. Have a good weekend.